What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Wing and Tail Boys podcast, your Northeast hunting and fishing destination. I'm Chris.
And I'm Angelo.
And we're your hosts. Join us as we navigate the woods and waters of the Northeast, sharing our passion for the outdoors.
Whether it's land management, outdoor recreation, hunting, or fishing, we're going to cover it all. With 40 plus years of experience in the Northeast, we'll provide insights, tips, and stories to help you make the most of your adventures and help you experience the wild.
So, tune in, grab your gear, and let's hit the woods together. And always remember, success is just a commitment away. What is going on, guys? Thanks for joining us here for another episode of the Wing and Tail Boys. I'm joined again by Dorge here, and we are continuing with our arrow series. We are on to episode 3 today, and this episode is going to be covering the progression of arrows basically from the beginning of time, with that very first arrow way back in the day.
I think I want to be more specific. It's about arrow material.
Arrow materials, okay.
And I think that itself is more important than what most people recognize. Because each material, when you build an arrow, have their downside and upside. And most people do not understand that each material, what does that mean? So we want to sort of devote some time to talk about how each material and how good and bad and what you can make them better. And in what way they are good and what way they are bad.
Okay, that's great. Getting more specific with the material. So we're talking about the progression of arrow materials today. I love that.
Correct. I mean, a lot of people need to understand, just because it's newer do not mean it's better.
Right.
The word better was misused. It is better for something and under some situation.
Okay. So
remember, not one material is always better. That's not true.
Right.
Because now we're not talking size, we're not talking about shape, we're not talking about length, we're not talking diameters or the size, which is size, or weight. We're just simply talking about arrow building material.
Okay. Awesome. And I think the big point that we're going to try to get to by the end of this episode is that with the progression of carbon arrows and the progression of bows over, I would say, you said, I think since 2006, right? So over like the last 20-ish years, give or take. Mm-hmm. Bows and arrows have progressed, but the thought process behind what combinations of arrows and bows to use really haven't changed. And I think
correct. It is like, I think in a lot of ways people are stuck in the concept, say, oh, no matter what, it got to be a V8 or it's no good. Or it has to be an inline 4 or else it's no good in cars. Sure. But the fact is that each of them have its place. Just like you can, like Ford, you do the EcoBoost to make the 4-cylinder better. Is it a better approach? In some cases, yes, but not in all cases.
Sure.
That's where a lot I thought I'd like to point out. It's not just because you say aluminum is the best. In some cases, absolutely. Because the word best is very misinformed. Because in what situation and for who, those has to come in together.
Sure, best is objective. You know, kind of like
not just you can actually test it, and they are better in some way. I mean, just like you got a certain idea what. See, in North America hunting, this is what most people expect the arrow to be the best. Is that you will use it for whitetail hunting, not more than 25 or 35 yards, on a bow that not exceeding 70 pounds, 30-inch straw. That's how most people measure an arrow to be the best.
Right.
But then things got more complicated. Is that we have a bows that shoots 80% off, a recurve, a 55, that kind of bow. And of course, if you throw it in crossbow, the whole world sort of blow it up.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like, and this one should hit home for you because you're not far from Chicago, right? But it's like the comparison between Jordan and LeBron and who's the best or the greatest, right? And you're talking about two completely different eras, 2 completely different time periods. The game has changed so much, and yet we still use the best to compare them, which is kind of crazy. You know,
which is so stupid because the time changes and rule changes. It's like, I mean, I remember one of my in college, one of my roommate is the baseball team. He said in today's junk, Babe Ruth would not make it.
Yeah.
Not saying that he's not good. He's good for his time.
Sure. Ex-
I'm
ex-
almost, I mean, they all beat the pants off me
yeah, exactly.
because
And I
I don't
mean,
play.
and it's the same thing with bows and arrows, right? You know what the
Hmm.
type of arrow that worked on a bow in the '90s or early 2000s probably wouldn't fly with a bow that was made in 2023 or
In most
2024.
cases, it still would, but not ideally.
Right.
But for some people, it is ideal.
Okay.
So it
And
depends on how you use it. So us go from the beginning of time, so we can look at things a little bit better.
sure. And let's start here with bamboo. I mean, we're going
Yeah,
back. We're going way
the
back here.
first arrow shaft in most cases in the east is always bamboo because it was a simple, straightforward off the thing. You cut end, put some end on it. You put the tip, put some feathers. You're good to go. In the west is always cedar because
Okay.
cedar fibers are reasonably straight. In many cases, it's very good. But cedar is not as flexible as bamboo.
So were they used around the same time periods, just in two different
Actually, they're
regions,
both
or
about the same time period. That's
okay,
true.
okay, and used on the same type of bow, essentially a long bow, I would imagine.
Yes, both of them longbow. Of course, the most aggressive bow at the time back then will be the Turkish,
Okay.
double curve bow. Just like I always in archery, I always like to show people the fun facts. Do you know why the Turkish were in front of the crusade would do this?
Well,
It's not saying screw you. It's that I still have my fingers. I can still shoot you.
oh
Because see, at
yes,
that time, what happened is that if the Crusades caught the Turkish, they'll cut this two finger off, so
and
they can't do it.
yep, and I
So they
think
come
that
out like this.
yeah, and then it's actually I actually just learned about this. They did the same thing with the French and the English or the British, I should say. I don't remember exactly the time period, but that's where the middle finger came from, because they said if they were going to beat the French, and when they did, they were going to chop off their middle fingers. And when
Right.
when the French won the battle, they started throwing up the middle finger to show like, yeah, hey, screw you, you know. So that's really cool that as we know,
Yeah,
history
and
repeats itself.
yeah, and then we look at the Japanese longbow. You know the Japanese longbow, the one who sit on the ground and shoot, is called the off-center bow. The top is 5 to 1 ratio.
Okay, I
The
think
top
I've
of the
seen
bow
those.
is 5 times and one. So when you shoot the bow, you actually point the bow forward and then shoot.
That's
And
cool.
the first release that was known to mankind was a Japanese hand glove. It is a mechanical release.
Really?
Yes, you put the string right here, you clip, you open your arm, you let go.
Oh, that's cool. You know what? They still use something similar to that
Yes,
at
they
this
do.
point?
It's the same thing. If you're going to do just Japanese jandao means the art of air or arrow. Those are still the same glove.
That's so cool.
But
So
then of course bamboo. Bamboo is actually a very good material, but not all bamboo are the same. You need to find a bamboo that's about 23, 22, 64.
okay,
That's the size that people find up to be the best.
okay. Utah outside diameter. We're talking.
Yes, outside. So 22 to 23, that whole size is what been used since the beginning of time till now.
Okay, and bamboo naturally is hollow, right? It's a hollow
No,
growing.
it's hollow with ridges. And then the bamboo they choose have the least amount of ridges on the outside.
Okay,
And usually what you do that they went through a tool, which is a round shaving tool, and you pull the bamboo through it, and then you get rid of all the notches.
okay, and it just ends up with a straight hollow.
With the break reasonably hollow with the notches.
Okay,
And of course the downside to this is that from arrow to arrow, based on where the notch is, the arrow will flex unevenly.
gotcha. Okay, and
Now, actually, was another thing that I cannot confirm or that is that the reason because the notches exist, that's the reason they are called the node.
I gotcha. Okay, that's some cool speculation. I like that.
And then, of course, the how do you make that better? And then, of course, the Western approach to make ultra high quality, called your royal hunting bamboo cedar arrows, they will actually go through the same round of approach like the fishing rods. They will now break the cedar and split into 6 through a plane, and then bundle them together. So you got 6 triangles, and
Okay,
then you tie them together, put varnish on it, and that's your arrow. Now,
so
for the super lightweight ones, they even go as far as like a fishing rod. They make the triangles, they cut the middle section off. So it's hollowed cedar arrows.
So the first, okay, so bamboo and cedar. Just to slow it down here for a second, bamboo and cedar came around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Bamboo was used in the eastern hemisphere, and
No,
cedar.
east, not Eastern Hemisphere, in the more towards the east, which is like the Chinese, Japan, Korea,
Gotcha. Okay.
Indonesia, that whole section.
Okay.
And then on the European side, they all use the cedar. I mean, the American Indian use the cedar too.
Right. So the bamboo naturally was somewhat hollow,
Mm-hmm.
similar to our arrows now. But the
Mm-hmm.
original cedar arrows were a bunch of triangles that were
They were original straight. They
right.
but because in order to make it more even, they will cut it into triangles and then put them together, just
Right.
like the way they did in bamboo fire rods, except it's simpler.
And it would
And
not be
then for the
hollow.
ladies who want to shoot lighter arrows,
Hmm.
that's the one you go hollow.
Okay.
Now, but then the more expensive Japanese arrows, which I'm not sure that the Chinese may do that, but I have no historic record to. I have not encountered with historic record, but I know the Japanese go much thicker bamboo and then just cut the section of exactly and make them into an arrow, which, as far as that time period is concerned, is considered the most advanced arrow because you overlap the where the bamboo change from one section to the other,
Hmm.
so it's very, very even. The weight is about the same, the performance about the same. I mean, it's like this is where the jandao, which is the art of arrow, comes in. It
Yeah.
become a true art form.
Gotcha. Okay. So
So,
it was an
mhm,
art form both from the making of the arrow standpoint and
and
also
also
the
for
act
performance.
of actual shooting. That's cool.
Because see, now you got arrow that's consistent, you got arrow that's technically repeatable, and you get away have performance and lightweight, and they are recoverable. That means when you shoot it, you can get it back and can still using it because they're also durable
Sure.
because they're meant to flex.
And I can't imagine the bows back then were putting out outrageous outputs. You
No,
know.
actually, they do not. The only highest output bows are actually the Turkish bow because
Okay.
they are lightweight and they meant to shoot fast.
Gotcha.
The Japanese bows are not a fast bow because the Japanese bow technically have three different sections. The one you kneel, which is
Hmm.
the jando, the one you go on horseback, and the one you stand and shoot.
Okay.
They are very different.
Right.
I mean, of course, the one you go on horseback are the one that curve like this. They have the highest performance. But just like those bows do not come close to what today's recurve, like the Black Widow and so on, they give her a lot more power. That's the reason back then the most ancient bow had ridiculous poundage, 150 kilo, 75 kilo and more,
That's
because
insane.
they're not efficient.
So they had to fix that with the weight.
Not to mention they are shooting a lot heavier arrows, a lot heavier weight. Now, those arrows in today's world, some people still like it. A lot of people use it and consider. I know a few guys who will build himself an arrow in with wood or cedar
Hmm.
or bamboo, and then go and shoot a bison, that kind of deal. This is pretty much a spiritual experience for them.
Yeah.
And as they go forward, now we go into more modern material, like steel tubing. They make one time, just like fishing rod. They used to make steel fishing rods. You know that.
I didn't know that. No.
Steel rod, a piece of steel with loop with eyes on it. That's where the initial fishing rod out of America is, back in the
Really?
1930s.
Wow. How
Nothing more
far?
than a piece of steel rod.
How far we've come in 90 something
Oh
years.
yes, definitely. And the steel rod has great because see the Chinese are using that steel rod as arrows, and that's exactly why it's called a bolt. Those are armor piercing, you know that armor
Yeah.
piercing, you know.
That's pretty cool.
And
The
then
original
the
armor piercing ammo.
the downside with this is that this do not have archery paradox. It is much technically the mass of the arrow is the key point of penetration.
Now you and I were
So
talking
speed
about
is not important. It's mass. It's not slug balls.
sure. So we were talking about this before we got recording. We were kind of going through our show notes for today, and you had mentioned that the steel arrows were kind of made specifically for shooting from the top of a castle because you didn't have to worry about since you were when they were shooting from the castle they were already elevated and oftentimes they'd be shooting a little higher too.
You know, you
And
just shoot at the sky and then loop them down.
exactly, and that essentially you're hoping gravity takes over. and the steel down, right? And since it's
Right, right.
heavier, it just hits like a truck.
Well,
That's
actually, if
incredible.
you look at some of the ancient, some of the old movies, most people are like the Chinese, especially the steel bows, are usually two-person bows. The person sit on the floor with the feet pointing up, pull the bow back. The guy put the arrow and shot it into the sky, and then you got a whole rain down onto the
Oh my
enemies.
goodness! Because
Because
like
when you're aiming, you're not aiming. You're just simply blanketing it.
you're just shooting enough to hope you're throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks. I guess.
Actually, you've got a whole group of people running towards you. If you just simply go down, you're going to hit something. If
Yeah,
not, you're going to trip them.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that is where the slug force of most people will think of heavy arrow is. So the ancient people, the Chinese, the Indians have done that since, I would say, BC.
So
Eh,
the idea of shooting a heavier arrow for penetration is not something new. That's been used for centuries, essentially.
Yes, but heavyweight penetration in today's bow is actually very bad. You
Right.
know why? Because the whole idea of today's bow is speed, so you can aim. And as you imagine, as in the older days, to compensate for the drop from arrow to arrow is out of the question
Hmm.
because the variation is so big. No
Yeah.
two arrows shoot the same. And
Right.
that's the reason when the Japanese cedar comes out, the Chinese cedar comes out with a hollow. Now you're talking repeatable match weight arrow. That's where that era sort of happened.
Okay. So when they went from the cedar to the hollow cedar, that's where they started paying attention to the behavior of arrows and trying to get
Because now
consistency.
you
Essentially,
can trust that doesn't arrow. Otherwise, when you shoot, how do you know an arrow going to behave?
that's fair. So let
Because
me.
see, when you
Sorry.
think about it, in the old cedar arrow, you had to wake them exactly the same. Otherwise, can they feel the same? You do not know how the spine's going to be.
Sure.
Because from stick to stick to stick, you can do some. That's the reason in the old days you got that measurement to sort of bend your cedars and then make sure they're straight and so on. But then, what is the spine of the cedar? Now you end up coming with a spine machine to find out the spine of the shaft, so you know the behavior of the shaft, so you can get a group of arrow that will behave the same when you shoot it.
I got you. So let me pose this question to you then.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when I was growing up and I started shooting bows, I never ever ever heard of tuning a bow, tuning your arrows, making sure that they're consistent. I never ever heard of that until 4 years ago, I would say, when I started doing my own research and diving into it. If if consistency from arrow to arrow has been something that's been focused on for so long, why do you think so many people or the industry has somewhat moved away from
No,
even
the industry
focusing
did
on
not
that?
move away. It's the most people who did it do not want to pay. See, first of all, when you buy in today's world, since the 1980s, when you buy a dozen arrow, how off are they?
Uh,
They're not. They're. And most people tell you. Just like I remember doing a Pennsylvania show, a guy told me, nobody should show over 25 yards. If that's your yardage, the difference with weight is really not that critical. I remember one time I was in Stark Rock State Park hunting with it, a father and son team. The father's quiver have 5 arrow. Not one of them are the same length, same brand, same material. And they killed deer.
that would drive me crazy. See, I
No,
know,
I'm seriously.
and I know someone who hunts like that. I know someone who has two different arrows in their quiver. They have three pins on their bow. The 20-yard pin works well for both arrows, and then the other two pins are 30 for one arrow and 30 for another. And depending on the situation, if it's thicker, they're going to use a heavier arrow. If it's more open, so they have two different arrows for two different situations, and it works for them.
Right.
That
And
would
this
drive
is
me
where,
crazy.
well, this is the same thing. Just like, a really good hunter back in the American Indian days, or the Chinese or Japanese hunter, they do the same thing. They shoot the arrow a few times to know exactly how they behave, then go and hunt. Because
Yeah,
the whole idea is that, did you able to remember which arrow would do what? That was the killer.
you gotta put tape on it or something. Build them different,
Okay, that's the reason
paint
they
them,
named
paint
the
them different
arrows.
colors,
That's the reason they named the arrows and they number the arrows. Even
right?
today's world, you should. Now, let me move back to see that with the cedar and bamboo arrow, you are now finally able to have material that's consistent enough that you can practice with a set and know how the rest is going to behave.
Okay. And that was with which material again?
With split bamboo and split cedar.
Okay.
That means the hexagon-based systems.
Yes.
Because now, like the cedar, you're able to match all the material based on choice and then engineer them together.
Okay.
And the same came with bamboo. You saw they have the notch right there. You cascade the knots so that the entire arrow behave pretty much even.
And so this is kind of like the precursor to hand picking your components that you're going to build your arrow with.
Correct, because you want consistency, then you weight them and so on. So, for example, you got a chunk of bamboo with this big ginormous. From today, you got a giant bamboo that's about this big, 14-inch diameter, about say half-inch thick.
Mm-hmm.
You cut the outermost section out in triangles and using that to build your arrows.
Okay.
So your material for all of them should out of the same batch, and you cascade them, you build it, you impregnate them, and finally, you just send them and get you exactly an arrow. So it's not unusual. A really good arrow is actually not round; it may be a hexagon.
Wow, that's
yeah. By hexagon,
that.
You also have one major benefit.
What's that?
Yes, you engineer the spine.
Okay. And I don't even know if this is even in the same category, but does that have anything to do with is that similar to like aluminum being extruded or not? Is that kind of like the same process?
No, it's not. Okay, because see now because of hexagon, the bending will always on a certain direction, so that after you find it, it's very consistent because the fibers are linear now.
Okay. So
then, of course, then we move to the next generation arrows, and people go with say solid fiberglass, hollow fiberglass, which does not work.
Yeah, and that's that's one of the more common ones these days. I mean, whenever you go to buy not common as far as hunting is concerned, but when you go,
it's actually very common. You just didn't recognize it.
When I purchased 2 years ago now, I think we bought my niece her very first kid's longbow, and it came with fiberglass arrows. So I feel like out of all of the ones we've talked about, the fiberglass might be the one that more listeners are familiar with from the bamboo.
Well, actually, the fiberglass is still used consistently today.
Right.
Carbon Express use a lot of fiberglass.
In hunting and target arrows, or are they?
Oh yeah, like the Maximas.
Really?
They are very high in carbon in fiberglass. How do you know? Well, you got one of the Carbon Express arrow, then you put it on the light on one side. You look into it; it's all bright.
I had no idea.
Actually, remember, in most cases, when you buy arrow, it's not high carbon. What do you think the rest of the material is? Yes.
Wow. Okay. All right. So, Dorge, tell us a little bit about fiberglass arrows. Then that's cool. I like that.
Fiberglass arrow, in some cases, is just like fishing rod. Fiberglass arrow are a little bit lazier. They're also heavier. Okay. So a lot of people actually like it. And then not to mention fiberglass arrow are the number one arrow, technically the only arrow that you should use when you want bow fishing.
Okay.
Because under ATA standard, the bow fishing arrow has to be, number one, solid. It cannot be hollowed.
Really?
Yes, that's the basic rule. The fiberglass arrow fit that bill very good. But then you said a better fishing arrow. Yes, I designed one with gold tip once. We're using the gold tip big game hunter and we put Viton in the entire shaft. So the arrow will actually not flex. And you have the weight that is 2 times the density of water. It will go through water like...
That's awesome.
Just like steel arrows.
Okay.
So fiberglass have its place. It still do today. And fiberglass in some cases is a more durable. Let me take it back. Fiberglass is more durable if you don't know what you're doing.
Okay. You mean from a build standpoint or from a shooter standpoint?
No, from the crush standpoint.
Okay.
Like when you bend the arrow really badly, fiberglass will recover easier than carbon.
Okay.
Because it got more flex in it.
Sure.
And the recovery rate is higher. But that's not true anymore. It depends on the construction approach.
The construction of the carbon?
Construction of there's 3 stages. The construction of the carbon fiber, the construction of the cloth, and finally the construction of the arrow. So all 3 stages are different.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they all have impact. And that's the reason people say, I got carbon fiber arrows. I say, do you understand why some carbon arrow costs $3 a piece in Walmart with vanes, knocks, points, and insert? While you can get some arrow with just a shaft for like $90 each.
Yeah.
And they're carbon arrows.
So if fiberglass is heavier, and as we know, one of the big things a lot of people like to hunt with these days is a heavier arrow, like we touched on earlier. And if fiberglass recovers easier than carbon fiber arrows, what's the downside to using carbon fiber?
Yes, way back in the 1970s, they're expensive.
Okay.
And that's the reason Beeman come with a carbon fiber, they extrude it. They're simply carbon fiber, go through a resin process, is a sludge. And then they went through extrusion, and they got the carbon arrow coming out. But the downside is that those carbon fiber arrows are dangerous.
Okay.
Because the carbon fiber are all linear. When you break them, it spurs.
Yeah. My brother learned that the hard way growing up. We used to shoot beam and arrows. That's all we shot growing up, and we loved them. But he didn't know at the time there was a small little crack in his arrow.
Yep, it was disastrous.
And when he shot the arrow exploded, and a shard about 4 inches long went right into his hand, like between his thumb and the corner. Luckily, he was okay. No serious damage. But I don't know.
But that was where the material is. But if we talk to Rick McKinney, the owner of Carbon Tech, he will tell you those extruded arrows have one of the best performance arrows you can buy because the spines are absolutely linear.
Right.
Because when you flex it, when you find the spine is not going to move.
Yep, and which we've talked about. I think it was the last episode where the spine of carbon arrows these days are not linear; they're more wrapped around the shaft, so to speak.
Actually, then we moved to actually before carbon. We got a very important material we have not talked about.
Yep, but before we get into that, I want to ask a quick question. We've mentioned in the last couple episodes and this episode, we mentioned the process of extrusion a couple times. What does that mean? What is an extrusion process? Or
extrusion process is it's like you got a mold, just like we make. If you know, extrusion is the same thing you do with pasta.
Okay.
You got a mold. You put this glue in the good or material in it, and you squeeze them, and then you come out this side, and then now you got a shape.
Okay.
So technically, you can imagine you got to mold a circle, and you got to mold in the middle, and then when you push the material, you come out a tube.
I gotcha. Okay.
That's extrusion.
I gotcha.
What's the downside of extrusion? Well, you better control your thermal and control your shape, because extrusion, if you do not control all those, that tube is not going to be straight.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, when arrows are made, is it a common practice essentially to just extrude one really long piece and they just keep cutting it as it comes out?
All right, that's exciting. Actually, that process was actually the right process if you make aluminum arrows.
But not for carbon.
Carbon is not ideal.
Okay.
I mean, is today carbon, can you make it? Answer is yes. The downside is that I won't sell it because it have all the downside with what carbon does. But then with the new material behavior and so on, it may not be that critical. Because the new material are the bonding of carbon, the splitting of the carbon fiber and so on, and not to mention like some of the new extruded carbon, the carbon fiber are much shorter.
Okay. So the just for the listeners, another quick example, the way I'm picturing it in my head is, you go out, you harvest a deer, you come home, you start shoving it through a meat grinder. You push this clump of meat in, and it comes out, in the form of whatever your meat grinder grinds it up to be.
Yeah, it's very much like a sausage maker.
Yep.
But except it's hollow in this case. I mean, in the case of fiberglass, it's solid.
Okay.
But see, this is where the aluminum is. Now, let's talk about this process, which will give you an idea of how it is. Carbon fiber is extruded in most cases, not rolled. Okay. Your first Beeman arrow, they're extruded. They're not rolled. Your aluminum arrows are all extruded.
All extruded. Okay.
Okay. But then, in the case of Eastern, they did one of the best job in aluminum, no doubt. The good thing about of all the extrusion is that you can make an arrow as long as you want. It is a capital intensive process. So that means after you make the machine, you got the material down, you can make a lot of that cheap.
Mm-hmm.
This is good for a company like Eastern. The way that Beeman approaches it, I know that in some time Carbon Force used this in some of the arrows, and so does Carbon Impact. Carbon Impact is the same owner of the original Beeman.
Okay.
So he still use a similar approach. They are a lot better because material is better and the machinery is better. Then what are the downside to extrusion? The downside extrusion is that from arrow to arrow consistency is always there, but the fatigue of the arrow is also there
So
because the spine is absolutely linear, and you're bending on the same part over and over and over again.
So essentially, the arrow wears out or wears down faster.
The material wears down faster.
Okay.
In other words, you're dealing with metal fatigue in case of aluminum. That's the reason if you shoot the correct spine of arrows on your recurve, you only got some 80 shots, then you're done.
And that's with the aluminum arrows, you said?
Yes. Now, how do you overcome it? This is time I think Eastern did a really good job on the ACCs, which is the aluminum inside and carbon outside. Now, let's step back a little bit. On the aluminum, a lot of people recognize when you extrude aluminum, it do not give you exactly what you need. Then you go to secondary process. Then you use the machine of rollers to change the thickness and the diameter of the shaft. Now, for most of them, I mean, do you know what 2219 means when you get aluminum arrow?
I don't.
Okay, I'll give you a crash course. The first two number is 64th. So 2219 means that you got arrow shaft at 2264 in OD.
Mm-hmm.
The 19 is thickness of the material in thousands. So 2219 means that you got an aluminum arrow with 2264 on the outside, and the thickness of the material is 19. Some people say, oh, 2216 is faster. Yes, it's 16,000 compared to 19,000. It is not better. It's faster. Technically, the wall is thinner. So it recovers faster because the reaction time is faster. But you got less material. The fatigue will kick in faster on the same identical poundage bow.
Okay.
Because the material is thinner.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And that's actually a question I've been waiting to ask. I kept forgetting to ask it about the extrusion process because I've heard you talk about it a bunch on other podcasts, and we've mentioned it.
It is a mold extrusion, and then the material come out the other end. It's unlimited length. The same thing as a pasta machine.
Yep. And I can't wait, and we don't need to touch on it now, but I can't wait to get into the process of making your knocks later on down the road because the in-depth process really comes out. But we're going to leave that as a little bit of a spoiler later on.
Sure.
So,
and then of course the aluminum aluminum is a monolithic construction. In other words, the front to bottom is the same material.
Okay.
So how you treated the material. But remember, when you deal with material, this part I think nobody did it better at Eastern. They know how to manipulate the aluminum. And remember, all metal material, have directions. That means if you go through extrude process, you went through a roller process, you can control every single element, every single molecule of the aluminum facing the same direction. Will give you superb linear performance.
Okay.
That means from arrow to arrow and batch to batch, as long as the machine is the same, temperature is the same, your control is the same, the arrow will be the same.
Right.
So they are extremely, extremely consistent.
They just don't last as long. Like I think
correct.
You're saying.
And the spine of the arrow is a linear.
Right.
That's the reason some people really love the aluminum arrow, because the spine is absolutely not like the carbon, not like the fiberglass, not like the other material. The spine is absolutely linear. It's so linear, it very much behaves like a cedar arrow because the material approach is the same. The cedar fiber is all the way straight.
Okay.
And then when you find the spine, it's not going to move on you.
Now, something really cool, because growing up, my uncle, my dad, my other uncle, they all shot aluminum arrows in the 90s, right? And one of the cool things was when my very first time ever shooting my compound bow, my brother took me to the range, and I ended up putting one arrow in the back of the other, right? And on on a carbon arrow, it's pretty cool. It just kind of goes in, and it splits open just a little bit, and it just kind of goes over the other one. And my uncle used to say, yeah, okay, that's impressive. He goes, but wait, when you do it with an aluminum arrow, it's a lot more impressive. And I said, why? He goes, well, when you hit the back of a carbon arrow, the carbon is so structurally sound that it can redirect the tip of the back arrow enough to get it perfectly in the middle. But in order to Robin Hood an aluminum arrow, it has to go perfectly in the middle because it mushrooms the same way that a bullet does, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't hit it perfectly in the middle, it'll just deflect or split the arrow rather than
split
go down the middle.
This section of the arrow and come out.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. I always have that thought in my head. Just a little story, growing up.
Also depends on who make the aluminum and what process they make it and what material. Just so you know, most people's aluminum today is made of 775.
Okay.
And they are all anodized and sealed. That's also a reason why aluminum arrow don't stick well with veins, because it's anodized and sealed.
All right.
That's no grabbing surface.
Okay. So right before we went on the tangent with the extrusion process, you had said that there was a very important material that we haven't talked about yet.
Aluminum.
It was aluminum. Okay, great.
Because aluminum in so many ways is, first of all, we can mass produce. And second, we can absolutely guarantee consistency through a few manufacturers.
Right.
I mean, there's a few variation of aluminum comes out that are really good. The ripped aluminum is fantastic because it added the spine rating without adding weight. But unfortunately, they died. Then from aluminum arrow, Eastern come up with really good stuff. It's called the ACCs, which is carbon in the middle and aluminum outside. My understanding is that they make the carbon arrow, they put it in the machine, and get the aluminum to roll on top of the carbon arrow.
That's pretty cool.
Yep, because remember, you got multi-roller. As you go through it, the roller is going to press the aluminum down into the carbon. Okay.
Now, and it seems like we're about to get into compound arrows, not compound bow
No,
arrows,
sorry.
but...
That what I just mentioned is the way the full metal jacket was made.
Okay.
The ACC is that the inside is aluminum, the outside is carbon.
Right. Aluminum,
the reason
carbon.
Eastern can make it so good because they can absolutely guarantee the strictness and the consistency of aluminum arrow. And then when they wrap the carbon on it, you got a super reliable base to put the carbon on.
Right.
And in my personal opinion, the absolute best hunting arrow ever made, besides my new generation arrow, was the AC Super Slim.
AC Super Slim. And what at the time, when they called it Super Slim, was it a 166?
It was the same time when Access comes out.
Okay.
It is based on the ACC, but it is a 204 ID with the carbon outside. And Eastern make it again in the ACC Pro Hunters. But this time, instead of using a 246, they go with a 235. So they use the ACC 249 as your base and add layers on it.
I got you. Right,
now those arrows are superbly reliable, superbly consistent, and you can and not to mention because they are heavier, the slug force is fantastic. For today's compound bow, for most people, those are the good arrows people should be using.
And those are the
ACC Pro Hunter, that kind of arrows.
Okay.
Not the full metal jacket.
Right.
I personally do not like the full metal jacket at all. Because,
honestly, me either.
Because the full metal jacket with aluminum on the outside, anytime you bend the aluminum, the carbon cannot recover from it.
Because the aluminum gets stuck that way.
Yes, because aluminum takes precedence.
If you're anything like me, you love to customize your bow while always making sure everything is just spot on. That's why I trust Anthony and Chris over at Big D Custom Pro Shop. They're located on Route 15 in Lake Hopatcong, New Jersey, and they have everything you need to tune your bow. And I promise you're going to leave there with a smile on your face. So, if you live in northern New Jersey, give my boy Big D a shout for all your archery needs. Also in northern New Jersey, Andover Hunt and Fish is your destination for all your outdoor and shooting needs. Located on Route 206 in Andover, New Jersey, they have everything you need for hunting, fishing, camping, gun exchanges, and more. Gerald, the owner, has been very good to us with his support for our channel, and we have no doubts that you'll have the same experience. Head on over to Andover Hunt and Fish today and let them know the Wing and Tail Boys sent you. When I head out to the woods, I have to know that I have the best performing equipment that I can afford, so that way I'm the only variable that I have to worry about. That's why I trust Fire Knock products for all my arrow and bow accessory needs. From arrow components to bow accessories like stabilizers and arrow rests, they have what you need. Dorge won't put anything on the market if it doesn't perform 50% better than what's already out there. So head on over to fireknock.com today to see what they're all about. Okay, so what I always heard about the full metal jackets, the Easton full metal jackets, I've never used them myself, but I've seen horror stories of them exploding. Not like, exploding like you would think of a bomb, but the impact hitting so hard that the broadhead goes into the arrow, or the back of the arrow kind of splintering on the shot. Have you heard anything about that? Is that a product of the
That's
way
true
it's
for
built?
every arrow.
Okay.
Fiberglass, ACC. Actually, it happened a lot more on Beeman. The reason you don't see it because you got an outsert in the front and outsert on the back.
Okay.
They all do that.
Okay.
I
So
mean, remember we talked about how arrow the 5 different motions last time? Well,
yes.
imagine when you have excessive amount of force, when one motion, especially since they can't flex, can't do anything, the circular expansion is what you see.
Okay. See
Because
what?
all the energy go to the back, nothing
Right.
holding it.
Right. See ya. So when I was growing up, the big thing that I was always told was you have to be careful with aluminum arrows in the cold, because when it was, I don't know if there's any truth to this, but what I was told is when you shoot an aluminum arrow in the cold and it flexes too far, that arrow is shot. Is there any truth to
Right.
that?
It's the same thing with any material. The same as carbon arrow. Because the reason that most people recognize because of resin improvements. It's the
Okay.
same thing in the arena when old first come up with the fishing rod. When it get really cold, the moment you flex the arrow, the fishing rod is cracked. The resin can't handle it.
Okay. Yeah, I had that happen a couple of years ago. Not in the cold. It was really weird. I was using a St. Croix. I personally love the St. Croix
St. Croix
rod.
should not do that. I mean, unless you are the really early, we talk before the St. Croix 1 and 2 comes out.
It
I'm a
was
big fishing guy.
it was 4 years ago. I was
No,
bass
then should not be.
I was bass fishing. I went to go set the hook, and the rod snapped in half.
No, I will tell you. Since it's 4 years ago, that will be a St. Croix 2 or St. Croix 3. You have cracked the arrow. You have somebody have not put a nick on the shaft. That's the reason it cracked. All the St. Croix rods have one of the best engineered approach. If that happened, that means that fishing rod had a nick on it.
That's unfortunate. And I kid you not, it was literally it broke the week I got it. It was like my
Well,
second fishing
I will
trip.
tell you what happened. That fishing rod, when they come to you, it got crushed from another rod to a guide would nick the blank. That is what happened. I mean, I build expensive fishing rods.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking the guy who owns about $10,000 worth of guys just in a box. Okay, so I know all fishing rod the original testing. So that rod you bought, I would guarantee it is on the transportation. Somebody crushed the box, and the guide of another rod touched the blank to the
Okay.
point that it crushed in the fiber. But St. Croix will take care of it. You just
Yeah.
send it back to get you a new one.
Yeah. No, St. Croix has always been great. I have
I
I
mean,
think
this
three
is
different.
one of the better company. I mean, in America right now, I would say that is five good fishing rod company. Your St. Croix, your old Agilumus,
Mhm.
your new Edge, which is the same as Norfolk, which Agilumus started on his own. Your Lemmy Glass, your Talon, and your Sage. I mean, some people like maybe add Winston or add a Scott to it, but those are fly rod only. I'm talking full line.
I gotcha. Yeah, I tend to gravitate towards the St. Croix Mojo Bass line. I like the Mojos.
They're okay. I mean, if you really like that, you should look at the St. Croix 5.
St. Croix 5.
Yes, the material is better, and just remember, don't overdo it. Because if you want crankbait, stick with fiberglass. It's better.
Yeah, I'm a
Sorry,
bit. We are going off a tangent. Yeah, I'm a big lily pad, throw it into the muck type of
oh,
guy.
then
So
you're gonna love the St. Croix too. Don't go
okay,
anything because you want high in fiberglass. That's exactly why. I mean, the same thing. If you want an arrow that behave much, what you call it, consistent behavior in low budget is really hard to beat fiberglass. High fiberglass contents, carbon arrows.
okay,
That's pretty much what Carbon Express give you.
okay. So that concludes our fishing tangent for the day. So,
Well, actually, we bring it back because see, if you
sure,
look at a fishing, the major difference between a fishing rod and an arrow is the fishing rod is tapered
tapered.
and the
Yep,
arrow is linear.
right,
And fishing rod have always a linear spine because of its tapering. But in the case of an arrow, there's no anchoring point. It flex on 2 points because it's
right.
flexing in the air on 2 points.
The front, and the back.
Right, but not except for now, the back. It's somewhere a little bit more forward.
Right.
But
Okay.
then
So
we can go to the next material. We know the good side about aluminum. We know the great things about fiberglass. Then in the 1970s, some people say let's go with carbon. And of course, the first carbon arrow is indeed Beeman.
that
Beeman
in the 70s, carbon arrows or that old?
about in the 80s.
I had no idea. I thought that was like
My
90s
19 my
technology.
1980 my 1988 Oneida, I only shoot Beeman Hunters.
Okay, that's cool.
But then that was extrusion arrow, carbon extrusion.
Okay,
So the spine is extremely linear, but it solved the problem by putting an outsert in the front and an outsert on the back. So the entire carbon on both ends is actually covered in aluminum, but it
right.
was not well engineered, not well designed. OD is not consistent. It takes forever and a day to get it to treat right. I learned the hard way
Okay,
because the CNC machines, they don't use CNC machine back then to make inserts. They use screw machines. So the
yeah,
consistency is not there. The weight consistency is reasonable. The not consistent is sort of a joke. And I learned that most inserts are not straight. Most parts are not straight. How the hell did we shoot anything?
yeah. So was it at this time? We're talking 80s. In the 80s. Did you have any interest in making your own arrows at this time when you already started
I still
noticing
do.
issues?
I fudge arrow. I get what I was on an E3 fudge blue to put in the arrows and put all the carbon veins. I
Okay,
still buy the knocks. I mean, I never did use aluminum because I noticed how you use a thing to round the front and put a Mako knock on a 2219.
so
And then a
so
lot of people choose the 2216 for that exact reason, because lighter weight.
okay. So since the beginning, you've always been trying to figure out how to make your arrows shoot properly, more consistent.
No,
How-
because the way I shoot back then, I was so good at it. I always knocked the veins off and so on. So it get really expensive. Every time I do anything wrong, I need to go back to the shop.
yeah.
I mean, way back, I live in Forest Park, so I can just go archery custom in Forest Park and Terry take care of me.
Yep. Can I be honest? That's why ever since I started shooting Arrow Concept, I only shoot 5 spot targets. I do not shoot at the same aiming point twice. I don't do it unless I'm shooting 3D. That is the only time I because I can't help it. We're all shooting for the same point. You know what I mean? So I could definitely understand the things
Then,
getting
in my personal opinion, I still think the ACC is one of the better approach. It's not a simple approach,
okay.
and it's a very capital investment approach. And at that time, a company called GoTip come up with a different approach.
Okay.
And the approach is is actually it's supposed to be a low volume approach, but it end up to be the highest volume approach. Is that you make mandrels, which is a piece of steel,
Hmm.
and then you roll the carbon on top of it, and you roll different layer of carbon in different angles, so they cancel each other.
Yep.
And usually it's 3, 4, 5 layers. But people don't understand. The second layer do not cancel the first layer. 100%. Because the second layer is always bigger than the first layer.
Hmm.
And the third layer is bigger than the second, and the fourth layer is bigger than the third.
Sure. It's like running around a track. the outside lane is always going to be a longer distance than the inside lane.
Correct.
That's just
Now,
how it is.
by doing so, what is the spine of the shaft going to be, the resulting spine? Answer is that you have no idea.
Right.
But I'll guarantee it not be straight.
Right, and that's where we get that,
The
that
helix
spine
spines
of, there we go.
or compound helix.
Okay.
Because it depends on how the layer of each of the directional layer of the carbon. This approach have a lot of merit. Don't get me wrong. First of all, the capital investment is really low. You only need mandrels, and then you need baking room to bake the arrows, and finally you need the hydraulic press to pull the mandrel out.
Okay.
And gold tip do the best. The reason the gold tip ID is so good because Marvin Carlson of Gold Tip, they have done the arrow, the mandrel. They make the mandrel out of tool steel. And instead of hydraulic pull the thing out, they drop that into a cooler. So the steel shrink. They just stick the
And then
mandrel
we
out.
pull it right out.
That's the reason when you look at the inside of a gold tip arrow, it's so freaking clean.
Okay.
And Carbon Express, Black Eagle, and so on, all those are hydraulic pulled mandrels.
Okay.
And then that's the reason they are not good if you use weaved carbon shaft. Why?
So why is it not good when you use weave?
Mm-hmm.
Does it get caught? Is it harder to get that steel out?
You end up with one end with Chinese finger puzzle effect.
Oh,
It's
okay.
wells.
Okay.
That's the reason you need to cut. That's the reason for even true for normal carbon arrow. As long as you're using the hydraulic press, whoever the pulling side is always larger in OD and ID both.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And in the case of like say element, that's the reason the pulling side can be as big as 207 on a 204.
Wow.
So that's the reason you want to use that side for the insert because
Sure.
your knot won't fit. The knot will fall out.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because there's been times in the past where I'll get a dozen arrows and I'll go to put knocks in and 6 of the knocks go in easy and 6 of the knocks I have to file down the knock a little bit to get it to fit into the arrow.
Right, because see, at that time depends on how when you pull on this side, the pulling side is going to end up bigger, and the pulled on the other side is going to end up smaller because it's pulling into it.
Right.
See,
That's
the moment you understand the reason I spend so much time talking about the manufacturing process, because now you know what you're facing.
right.
Because until you know what you're facing, what is your problem?
You don't know it.
You look for those.
Yeah. No,
And then go ahead.
I was just gonna say that that's I never realized how much went into arrows. Obviously I wouldn't be able to build one in my backyard, but I didn't realize how many. I guess with what we're trying to build on today is realizing that every time you create something new, it fixes one problem, but another problem arises with that.
You got that. And you need to understand the fundamental approach of how you build how each material behave, what the benefit and downside of each material, what you have overcome, and what will be new that you have to overcome, or what you're going to address. I mean,
Right.
just like the original carbon like Beeman, they are nothing more than but see, the Beeman is long carbon fiber extrusion. The new extruded carbon fiber is short carbon fiber extrusion. So they're much safer. So when they break, they behave like tempered glass. But at the same time with the gold tip, they break. They also behave tempered glass because they're layer over layer. So they do reasonably clean break.
Okay.
Reasonably clean break.
Reasonably clean. Operative word, reasonably.
Yes, but as time goes on in today's world, with the resin being so much better, now we pretty much got clean brick. We got a straw in your hand now, which is not that bad.
Okay.
But then, just like every single arrow, what's on the label? Flex, check before
flex
shoot.
Before shooting.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who flexes every single arrow before every single shot. So
well, just like people say, you should always put your safety belt before driving. Same thing.
Yeah, I
you
guess
should, but you didn't.
That's
the
true.
reason we got people. I mean, unfortunately, it happens, and that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
So the safer is not to shoot. You never have that problem.
Right. Yeah.
Now let's talk about carbon.
Yeah,
I want to sort of bring it into carbon fiber because
exactly.
this is the part that really confused a lot of people.
And I think the big thing we want to try to focus on is a lot of people think a carbon fiber arrow is a carbon fiber arrow,
Oh, no, 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 no,
but
no.
that's not true. There are a lot of
Carbon
different,
fiber for the last, I would say, it'd be 1979. That will be 75, 85, 95, 10, 205. Last 45 years. Carbon fiber comes so far. It's not even funny.
right? And obviously, the way that it's made, the way the arrow is
And the grade.
designed, and
See, most
okay,
people in the old days, they don't understand how carbon fiber is rated. They rate it because manufacturer claim. And of course, most people learn about carbon fiber from fishing rod companies. Your basic, your IM5, IM6, IM7, IM8. Well, that's pretty much your G-Loomis numbers.
okay.
And then your bass pro shop number, your 32 ton, 48 ton, 64, 72, 84 ton. Do anybody know what that means?
No, I don't know what it means.
Yeah, it just sounds impressive.
Yeah, sounds
But
fancy.
yeah, sounds fancy. But the just like in Japanese manufacturing terms, most carbon fiber arrows are made of 24 and 28 tons. In the true carbon fiber manufacturing talk, is the V300, V400, and V500. That's where the real numbers is.
Okay.
Those are where carbon fiber first come out.
And what do those numbers represent? Like, what is it? What does that
The
measurement represent?
That is the tonnage of the carbon fiber in the tube under a minimum specification. The higher the number, in other words, it's modulus. In other words, the higher the modulus of a carbon fiber, the more you can resist, the
Okay.
less you can use.
Okay. So it's
So in
just
other
essentially a strong the higher the
string
number,
rating,
the stronger the stronger
strength to
the
weight
fiber.
ratio.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, just like in the case of like some of the older Carbon Express arrow, which I don't know because they moved the factory in Korea to Vietnam. I do not know their stuff that well anymore. I mean, I know that what's his name? G5 or G5 arrow is technically the old Carbon Express Maxima stuff with
Okay.
the different cap on the back. That's what I look at and say. The approach is just like Carbon Express. Then
That
the
looks
guy said, "Yeah."
familiar.
I remember one time when one gentleman from PSC come to me with arrow. I take a look at the inside. I look at the shell. It's a retouch coach arrow. How do you know? I said, construction.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I
So
happen to have that eye. I mean, because I understand arrow, I understand carbon fiber manufacturing process, and every company have a certain amount of process that they can't get away with because
sure.
that's what they're good at.
Yeah. And when you know what you're looking for, it's a lot easier to identify it also.
Correct. And look at the finish and so on, the broach, then you know. Now,
Exactly.
a lot of people talk about modulus. Modulus is the strength to weight ratio of the carbon fiber. It is pretty much stay all the way until about 2015. Then
Also,
Carbon Force come up with the weave on the outside. Then we got Element later with the 2-to-1 ratio weave on the outside.
so a lot more recent. We're talking
Oh
in
yeah,
the last 10 years or
and
so.
then Carbon Express got a patent on putting 1K weave as decoration on the outside. No, it is absolutely. They got a patent using 1K weave as decoration.
So and by decoration, you're literally saying it does nothing but make it look good.
Yeah, when you put 255 touching edge to edge, what are you doing to it? What can you do to it?
Not much.
Exactly. So what
Okay.
else is it? Decoration.
Okay. I mean, they do look. The weave does look nice. I'll give them that.
Of course that.
Yeah.
I mean, we understand it's a very engineer look. That's what it is. The engineer
Okay.
look is what make people really want to buy. Now, this is where the understanding of each material and the laying of the material come in. Of course, the carbon fiber from all this time is basically your sheets. All carbon fiber is pointing one side to the other side, and you roll it. If you roll it 100% linearly, you end up the same approach as the beamant because all carbon fiber point towards one side. When you break them, they spur.
It's perfect. Okay.
Right. Now, when you use carbon fiber, it's the same material. Put 1 to 5 degrees to the left, 5 degrees to the right. when they break, the first layer overcome the second layer and so on, you got a reasonably clean break.
Okay.
But then your spine is helix or compound helix.
Okay.
Then, in order to save it, you're using something like a weave. But unfortunately, fortunate or unfortunate, depends how you look at it, people now using a weave on the outermost layer. Now the direction of the weave and how the weave is being become more and more important.
Sure.
If it is a 45-degree weave, then the breakage become minimal, isn't it?
Okay.
If it's a 90-degree weave, you got loop string that go up the weave, go off the chart, because you got one set of fiber that's 100% wrapping it. The other set of fibers like this. So you got to stretch, you got to stretch, and you got to stress. You got both controlled. So 45-degree will be the best. But 45-degree is not an easy process. It's a very expensive product.
Right.
Because you need a fiber that's much longer, because now you're rotating it 45-degree.
Okay. Now, along with the progression of carbon fiber, and like we said, the big jump in carbon fiber happened about 9 years ago. It's about to be 10 years ago in 2 days, 2015. You said. Along with that,
No, it's not a big jump. It's the choice of material.
Choice of material.
Because all of a sudden, the demo people start putting weave on the outside of the shaft.
Gotcha.
But weave is not weave. That's another thing.
Okay. What do you mean?
Because see, when you look at weave, this is called 1-to-1 ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the weave of that time, because of the way carbon fiber behave, is 2-to-1 ratio.
Okay.
See the difference?
Yeah.
That means you have two fiber from, assuming that we look at a fiber from north to south, east to west. The ideal weave is north to south, east to west, 1-to-1 ratio.
Sure.
But we find out majority of carbon fiber is 2-to-1 ratio.
Why is that?
It's easier to make.
Okay. Is it also cheaper to make?
No, because it gives less stress to the carbon fiber. Because when you do this, look at that.
Yeah.
This two fiber is less stress. This is the only stress carbon fiber.
Right.
See that?
Okay.
As you decrease the carbon fiber material, you increase the performance.
Okay, so the less carbon fiber there is in an arrow,
the thinner the carbon fiber.
Thinner. Okay. Is that per layer or the final product?
No, we're talking sheets right now.
Okay, just the sheet. Okay.
Right. Just like, when you look at tissue paper, it's made of material.
Right.
What direction is the material? You don't know.
Okay.
With a carbon fiber, you know exactly which way the direction of material is.
Okay. Now, along with the progression of carbon fiber, hasn't the resin used to create the carbon fiber also progressed over time?
Oh, big time, big time. That was the reason why a lot of the older carbon fiber gets such better, because the resin, the structure of resin, the purity of resin, and the control, the knowledge of how to use the resin improved.
Okay. And where was I going with that?
That's the reason even the cheapest carbon fiber arrow you buy is fantastic compared to the old ones.
Yeah.
I mean, just like I'll give you an idea. The carbon fiber arrow you buy in Walmart for $350 is much better than original gold tip arrow that you pay something like $8 a piece.
Okay.
Because the manufacturing process is much more matured. So even the junkiest machine to make this stuff is really good.
Well, that's good. At least at least we know we've come that far. What purpose does the resin serve? That's what I was going to ask you. When you're making an arrow, what does the resin do, or what is it?
It stabilizes the carbon and forces the carbon to react a certain way. In other words, the resin is the concrete.
Okay.
The resin is the concrete. The carbon fiber is the rebars.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's good to know then. And how?
But except the ratio is opposite. In the case of concrete, rebar is only the inner. Majority is the concrete.
Okay.
And in the case of carbon fiber, the carbon fiber is majority work. The resin is still to make sure the carbon fiber don't move.
Okay. All right, so it's just enough to kind of hold it in place and help it.
Correct. And the good thing about the new resin is that it is so finite amount of material. the less material you have, the better off you are. But you need the material to bond them together.
Right. So, in today's industry, especially when it comes to hunting products, everyone is looking to where they could save a buck or two, right? You know, when it comes to bows, one of the big things I love about Darton, for example, is they have so many patents out for bow technology that they're able to sell their flagship bows for a lot less because they don't have to pay another company for their technology or for the
Yes and no, but
you know,
you need to understand if you look at today's bow technology or patents, they're all gone. There's very
right.
little patent left. Most patents, like the twin cam, the binary cam, and so on, they all
Mhm.
expire in 2022, 23. It's gone.
Gotcha. So everyone's
I
able
mean,
to just use.
the twin cam patent expired in 2018. The single cam expired in 2017.
Okay.
And the binary cam was gone in 2013, the 23.
Okay.
So, all the rest of the patent is only a specific condition, like the Matthew AVS patent, the roller turn.
hmm
It's really not that big a deal.
Okay. So
But the people keep on trying to sell the patent because it make them feel better. But people need to understand, just because the patent expired do not mean that something is bad. It
right.
just means that if you come up with an execution, first of all, you don't have to pay anybody for the patent fee. Second, it's proven.
Sure. Although, just to touch on the proven thing real quick, I still, you and I have talked about this before. We'll talk about this in a future podcast because you and I want to get, once we're done talking about the arrows and everything, we also wanted to start getting into bows and the progression of bows. What I don't understand is why we've gotten away from a yoke system. I personally do not like the binary cam system. I thought yoke systems were way easier to work on. I thought they were a
Because
lot more
it's faster.
consistent, faster as in speed of the arrow. Okay,
That's the
okay,
only reason.
that's
But
good
then
to know.
remember, right now, if you look at all the latest pattern, like what Matthew did, what Darton did, what Bowtech did, if you're a good bow mechanic, you got a good bow press,
hmm
you can get the same result in every one of them you can do.
Sure,
But then you ask yourself a question, just like every single mechanic will tell you. Anytime you put a fastener or adjustment, what does that mean?
everything changes.
That means anything can be undone.
Yes, yep. You can't guarantee that parts aren't moving as you're shooting. You know, you know what? I'm going to save that point for the future podcast. I don't want to get
Yes, yes,
down
absolutely.
another rabbit
But
hole.
let's go back to the arrow shaft.
Yep.
First of all, we don't really need the technical specific of what we 3,000, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 means, or we do not need what 24 ton, 32 tons, or 28 ton or 48 ton means,
hmm
or IM 678. The fact is that any of those simply is a naming of a material.
Okay.
The material is only good if the final product do exactly what you want it to, and there's no downside, or the downside is the minimum.
hmm
Just like, is the beam and arrow very good? Answer is yes. It did everything you want with the price you want to pay, and it did exactly what you wanted to do. Have the true linear spine.
Right.
That is Eastern aluminum arrow is the only one that will match that.
Okay.
The ACCs don't, but the ACCs will last longer.
Okay. So they
And
perform
then
a
the
little
gold
less,
tip
but they
carbon
last long.
arrow will last even longer. But remember, when the gold tip come out, it's in the early 1990s. The resin improved. The resin process improved.
Has
The
improved
material
significantly.
improved.
Yeah.
But it also allowed something like gold tip, like vapor. Vapor is also something like gold tip already. Your Carbon Express, and of course, right now, nearly every single arrow that you can dream is out of Xiaoming, China, or out of Vietnam. They're all the identical process like the gold tip stuff.
Okay. So at this point, we're about an hour, 5 minutes, hour, 10 minutes into this podcast. And I think if we wanted to, we could probably spend another 2 hours talking about
No,
carbon
I want to
arrows.
talk on
You
the
know?
next podcast. We will dig into the carbon part.
Okay. So I have
Because I think today I just want to sort of like rush all the way to that point
sure.
so that we're able to build, because we talk about all the good and bad things about each material.
Okay.
Now we go all the way into the where I think carbon fiber is the way to go, and
Okay.
how carbon fiber will really make and break the next generation.
Okay.
And the concept of how carbon fiber was built to the point that people don't understand what aero is.
Gotcha. So I just if it's okay with you, I'd like to end this with just a couple questions.
Sure.
The first being, can an aluminum arrow, if I was shooting my bow today, I shoot 70-pound, 27.5-inch draw length. Could today's bows, or could an aluminum arrow, a true aluminum arrow, handle today's bows in a
Absolutely.
hunting
Actually,
application?
you'll be better in most cases.
Which is, I guess, my next question was, the difference between the aluminum and the carbon arrows is essentially aluminum is more predictable and more consistent from shot to shot, but carbon arrows last longer. Is
Yes.
that correct?
And carbon arrow can be mixed thinner.
Can be made thinner. Okay,
They can mix thinner. It looks sexier.
it looks great, but as far as a application standpoint, does that really matter?
No.
Okay. Which I honestly I knew the answer to that question already, but we'll get into the diameters later on. That's one of
Yeah,
the
and but just simply aluminum is big in diameter. Aluminum recover. I mean, then we're talking material capability and material approach.
okay.
The material is not as ideal
Okay. Now,
as time goes on in today's bow. That's a fact.
gotcha. Now, I meant to touch on this earlier when I brought up the dart and bows, but what I was getting at with that was, in today's day, everyone's looking to figure out where they could save some money, right? Is it safe to say that, like, with bows, you can kill a deer with a $300 ready to hunt bow off the shelf, okay? So you could save money there. My question is, when it comes to arrows and carbon arrows specifically, are you getting what you pay for? Like, if you spend more money on an arrow, is it
To
essentially
be frank with you, this is part that people don't understand. Hunting is just like fishing. It is not the equipment, it's the knowledge of hunt.
okay?
It is only in the point of your true absolute trophy hunter. He either spend the money on his clothing, his comfort of going there and back, his equipment, or all of the above.
Right,
When you really know how to hunt, you find out that your comfort is actually the most important.
100%.
Because if you're not comfortable, you are not hunting. You're going to screw up the place.
Well,
You're
you're
going
going
to
to screw it
sweating.
up.
You're
You're not
going
going
to
to be
screw
in
up
the
the
tree
place by the
long.
scent.
Yeah.
You're going to, just like fishing. You can fish with the cheapest Walmart fishing rod, but at the end of the day, if you encounter something that demand more, you're not going to get it.
Right, that's fair.
But then that is where the difference is. It's like, I think just like the days when I'm doing stereo. Can you get by with, say, an iPad with a good amplifier and good bells, like JBL speakers, small ones? You can pretty much get pretty decent effect.
Sure.
But then I remember the time that I was a dealer for timpanis and also for apologies. You can spend 120 grand and $60,000 in remodeling your house just to put the speaker in.
Yeah.
What the difference will you get? The extra large, last 1 or 2%. Just like every industry. You will, in today's world, you can get to 90% very easily, affordably. And for most people, I tell them, don't go any further.
Okay.
Improve your skill, your knowledge. That extra 10% are only for people who have money.
Okay.
Who think they can use money to buy this lack of skill and lack of experience?
Right.
Answer is no.
So you have people that have the 90%. They're looking to gain the extra 10, or they have that 10%. They think they can acquire the 90 a different way.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So my last question here is two different people. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have someone who is super in tune with everything they're doing. They tune their bow, they tune their arrows, they go out to the range, they weigh all their components. They really focus on everything from beginning to end. What is the best material for an arrow for someone who is that persistent or that into what they're doing?
It will be a tough call. Because
Okay.
if the person is that good and they practice that much, carbon will be a better choice. For
Fine.
people who know what they're doing and able to do it consistently in a short form, aluminum would be better.
Okay.
Because
And what if
aluminum will perform absolutely 100% predictable.
okay. And then the flip side of that is someone who doesn't have the time or the know-how to do that stuff. You know,
Then you need to somebody to build your arrow.
okay.
Then you I mean, just like, I think I use the gun case. If you don't know better, if you want to shoot long range, you buy a box of Black Hill. You know you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody bought your gun, you're good. If you don't want, you want to reload yourself and do it, I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time. And I'll guarantee you won't match. That's the unfortunate part. That's the reason, in most cases, for guys who really like work for a living, like when I used to be, you're better off finding a good arrow builder and let them build your arrow.
Yep.
I'm not saying that you can't do it. It's just not worth doing it.
Yep. Which I will say from experience, unfortunately, I think as of today, Exodus has closed their doors permanently, right? If I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
I believe so, but that don't
Today
mean
is
that
December
this.
30th.
I mean, all my finance dealers do the same thing.
Yeah.
The only difference with Exodus is that they have relabeled their arrow a name. I mean, the same thing with Vital Limit. He's called the arrow tank, whatever. I mean, the same thing with X-Wing Custom. They call it the Titan series and so on.
Sure.
I mean, it's every single fine art certified and trained dealer will build you the same arrow, because what Exodus got is the fine art spot weave.
Yep.
With all the components.
Yep. And essentially what I was getting at was a couple years ago, I think it was 2 years ago now, I had Jeremy Martin. I think he's out of New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Right?
Jeremy out of he used to be out of Ohio. Now he's out of West Virginia.
Okay. So he built me a set of 246s a few years ago. I absolutely loved them. And you, of course, you build the arrows great as well. So with that being said, I think that's essentially where we're gonna cut it off here. Unless you have anything else that you'd like to add.
No, I think it'll be good.
Because
next episode, I really want to dig into carbon fibers, because I think right now most people don't understand it, the construction and the implication of it. That would be a good episode, because I know this is technical and sometimes we go off in the tangent into other stuff. But remember, without the industry, in order of other industry, I won't have what we have today.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean we have. I feel like every time we sit down and talk, something else comes up that we want to touch on at some point or another that you've probably thought of before, but I haven't thought of before. So as I keep going down this rabbit hole of arrows, I keep finding different tunnels and paths to take, and
but that's the reason for the podcast, so we can learn more from each other.
Exactly, and like I said in the first episode, and like I will continue to repeat over and over again. The most important part for me with this series is to share the knowledge and to give everybody the information.
Final word. The knowledge I got is based on what I know. Mm-hmm. Am I 100% right? Hell no. I have been proven wrong so many times, but I'm telling you what I know is to be true.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's how it should be. With that being said, I want to thank the listeners for joining us for another episode here, specifically with the Arrow series. Hopefully you guys are getting some really great value out of this stuff. I enjoy meeting with Dorge and learning this stuff as I go, and I'm hoping that you're finding some value in that as well. If you found some value today, head on down to the bottom. If you're on Apple Podcasts, click on that 5-star review. Leave us a nice written review. Let us know what you think. Dorge loves it when you ask questions. He loves being efficient. If you can answer, the same question that people have at one time, that would be great. And if you're on Spotify, just a 5-star review goes a long way. With that being said, we'll be happy to meet with you next time. And until next week, remember, success is just a commitment away. Have a great week.
Good.